You're looking at a live picture there. I believe it's still live. You can see flames coming from party headquarters. This is happening right now in Cairo, Egypt. A curfew has been in effect for the past 48 minutes. Obviously, people are still out on the streets, some of them perhaps headed to their homes, wanting to watch their president on television. CNN correspondent Ben Wiedemann is standing by. Ben, perhaps you can give us an update.
In front of our office on the Corniche, which is the main road by the Nile, we have what looks like an armored personnel carrier from the army on one of the main bridges across the Nile. There seem to be hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters who are trying to get off the bridge and onto this main road. They're being stopped by about 150 riot police who have been just firing constantly tear gas, making it almost impossible to breathe here. Of course, the tear gas is mixed with rancid, thick smoke from burning tires and cars as well. The curfew went into effect about 50 minutes ago, but it doesn't seem that any of the protesters are observing it. They continue to try to make their way into the middle of the city. Egyptian television had announced that President Mubarak would make some sort of statement, but that has yet to come. He, in his capacity as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces, announced a curfew from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. in Alexandria, Suez, and of course Cairo. Cairo being the scene of the biggest protests and clashes between the police and the protesters. No idea how long this is going to go or really where it's going. The protesters don't seem to be backing down on their biggest single demand, that President Hosni Mubarak leave power now.
Ben, I know it's difficult for you to speak because you're breathing in all that tear gas and the other things that are in the air, and we appreciate your staying with us. Reuters was reporting that there was smoke coming from the ruling party headquarters in Cairo. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I can see down the road in that direction, and it appears that there were some cars on fire in front of the ruling party headquarters, but from my vantage point, I don't think the ruling party headquarters is on fire at this moment. There were a lot of riot police guarding it throughout the last few days, although that seems to be very close to the most intense clashes between the protesters and the riot police. But I really can't tell for sure whether it's on fire, but I suspect it is not.
Nile TV, the public television station in Egypt, I suspect is controlled by the government, is saying that there are exceptions to this curfew rule, and the exceptions extend to journalists like you, ambulances, and firefighters. Does that make you feel safer about roaming the streets down there? Because I understand you had trouble earlier.
I wouldn't feel safe at all on the streets at the moment. Earlier today, we were attacked by plainclothes policemen who broke and stole our camera. One of our stringers who shoots for us sometimes, she got hit by several rubber bullets fired by the police. Other journalists have been attacked by plainclothed and uniformed police. The problem is not the protesters. The protesters from the very beginning, 4 days ago, of these demonstrations have been welcoming. They've been happy. In fact, they have been saying, cheering when they hear we're from CNN. It's really the government. You can sense that, the police are angry at journalists for showing pictures of what's going on, and we're trying our damnedest to get these pictures out. But, we've got no internet connection. We've got no cell phones. Can't even send an SMS. I've been trying to reach my wife in the suburbs, and it's been very difficult. Communications, the biggest challenge, in addition, of course, to the violence that the police are subjecting us to.
How are you getting the signal out? Can I ask you that, or can't you say?
I'd rather not say, because it's best that we keep that sort of thing to ourselves. We have a backup system, and but it's also under stress because many other journalists are using the same system, and that's why sometimes our signal comes and goes. It's not clear. It's
I understand. Let me ask you this question, because the Egyptian government and the military seem to be showing some restraint over the past several days, and now all of a sudden this is happening. You see the armored personnel vehicles on the road, you see tanks on the road, you see, I can hear the tear gas being fired into the crowds. They've cut off social media, they're arresting journalists, they're attacking journalists. I mean, isn't this making it worse?
Well, certainly if you speak to every Egyptian I've spoken to is flabbergasted by what's going on. The violence of the police, the absolute intolerance for any sort of peaceful expression of discontent has left people wondering if this government is really beginning to shake from these protests. And let's keep in mind, it's only 4 days now. Regarding the sort of the behavior of the police, on the first day of protests, on Tuesday, they were under orders to be restrained. But since then, a series of declarations saying there would be zero tolerance for demonstrations, and that certainly is what we've seen. Now, the army, as far as we can tell, has not yet been brought into the fray. They're stationed outside government buildings. We've got one tank right in front of our office, but they have not been used to suppress the crowd. Now, I'm seeing 2 soldiers walking up the street in the direction of the protesters, but what's interesting is they do not have, oh no, they do have automatic weapons. Oh. I thought they didn't. It's a little hard to see, and my eyes aren't working very well at the moment. But the army isn't in large enough numbers to replace the riot police, and the worry is that maybe the army themselves won't have any better success at controlling the crowds than the riot police. Well,
let me ask you, Ben, the curfew has been put into place. You said not many people are obeying the curfew or listening to the government. So how big are the crowds that you're seeing?
I'm sorry, how big are the crowds that I'm seeing?
Yes.
Well, it's difficult to say because we've got a very panoramic view of the Nile from where we are, and I can see hundreds of people on the bridge, but I know that there are demonstrations going on everywhere, even in my neighborhood, which is a leafy, quiet neighborhood. On the margins of it, there are demonstrations. So I think these scenes are being duplicated in many places around Cairo, if not all, many parts of Egypt as well.
And another question: you said that people were cheering when you said you were from CNN, when you were out and about in the crowds. We talked to a protester on the streets of Cairo who said that he was sort of taken aback that the United States wasn't speaking out more strongly in support of the protesters. What are you hearing?
Now, there's a good deal of frustration with the U.S. attitude toward the Mubarak government because the feeling is that the United States has never really pressured Mubarak to make the kind of reforms that Egyptian people have always been demanding. What's interesting is that, if you recall, President George W. Bush was, by the standards of any U.S. president, was the harshest when it came to Egypt's human rights record. But the feeling was that when Obama came in, he wanted to be different from Bush and kept his diplomacy more private, behind closed doors, and left criticism out of the public arena. Now, right now, are you seeing our live picture?
Yes, I am. Yes, we are. Tell us what we're seeing. We're seeing people running down the streets.
Okay, what you're seeing is the riot police are slowly moving back. The demonstrators are moving forward. What's interesting, there's a soldier amongst the demonstrators. He's not stopping anybody, but nobody's harassing him. The soldiers are trying to calm the crowd down, but the crowd is just moving forward. You can't make out what they're chanting, but they're moving forward. We haven't... Oh... Hurriya, freedom, and that's what they're chanting. And they're moving toward the Ministry of Information. Now the police are firing tear gas back at them, but the protesters are throwing rocks, and they don't seem to be driven back by that.
Right. Ben, let's pause and just listen for a time. Thank you.
I'm sorry, say again?
Let's pause and let's listen for a time.
Okay.
So, Ben, as you're watching this, tell us how unusual this is to see on the streets of Cairo.
This is unprecedented in modern Egyptian history, that you've had mass protests coming forward like this, and the army stepping in. As you can see, the army, nobody's attacking the army. The army is being treated with respect, if not adulation. People cheering and waving at them. The army isn't trying to keep the protesters back, but the protesters are very angry at the riot police, who over the last few days have been brutal in their crackdown on the protest movement. But this is an incredible scene. This is history in the making on live television. Let's just listen in.
We're gonna break away. Of course, we'll be right back, but we must take a quick break, Ben. We'll be right back. Stay with us.